thanks so much, Graham, for getting on here. Before we get started and before I start throwing questions your way, if you don't mind just giving anybody who's going to watch a brief overview of who you are and what you do and kind of your involvement in sports.
Yeah, thanks, John. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. My name is Graham Betchart. I'm a mental skills coach, specifically for basketball players. I've worked with all athletes, but my niche is kind of basketball. I formed a company called Play Present. It's a mental training company, and we've kind of built ourselves to try to help normalize and spread mental training to everyone. That's our mission. And I've been doing this for 12 years, steady. And, my initial goal was to try to, get hired by an NBA team. And then what I realized was the way I was going to kind of build it is work with young people and get them to the NBA. So my philosophy has been work with teenagers, train them to get to the NBA. And my philosophy with mental training is I'm not here to solve a problem. We're here to actually train. So it's not a quick fix. It's like any other skill. And so Play Present is built around actually training people on how to develop their mind and develop all their skills. And we know it doesn't happen in an hour. This is awesome. This is real work.
So you shared the name of your brand, Play Present. Can you kind of just share how you came up with that name, why you chose the name, and kind of what like the trademark or the philosophy of your training is?
Yeah, I was an athlete like most people, played in high school and walked on Division III in college, and I always consider myself a very competitive person, and winning was something that drove me. And as I kind of kept getting to the root of how do you actually win and what makes great performers great, what kept coming up was this ability to be present, to be in the moment, to forget about results and outcomes and totally immerse yourself in what was going on. And so this, I don't know where it came from, but the words Play Present came to me like 10 years ago, and it became just this philosophy that we kind of preached, where our ultimate goal was to win, but we knew to win, we had to be present. So we kind of were like, hey, I want to play present. And I started off as a high school coach, coaching a JV high school team for 6 years. And during those 6 years, this Play Present just kind of came out as the essence of what I thought was the most important thing that I could teach a kid, was the ability to be in the moment and trust all their skills. And kind of what kind of happened was the more we did that, the more successful we became. And so that's where the name Play Present came from, and it became a philosophy and kind of the way that kind of guides everything we do, So it built from there.
And so I'm just trying to wrap my mind kind of around the concept of your brand a little bit. Because that kind of goes against the grain in terms of sports to not think about the outcome. You have those classic phrases where they say winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. But then now I think there's more and more people coming out, kind of getting behind the movement of being in the moment or just focusing on the process. How do you balance? I know this wasn't a question I sent you, but normally things just come off the cuff and I just throw them out.
Yeah.
So how do you how do you balance the importance of results? Because after all, sports, the result is important, but still not making it the thing and not allowing it to steal your focus off of what you're trying to do in the game.
Well, I think, John, it's important to be really clear that results are important for everyone. I love results. I love being successful. We're not saying that results aren't important, but what we're saying is focusing on results does not get you great results. Right. So the irony of it is that allowing yourself to shift your focus to a process-oriented focus or to being present actually allows you to win more. So I actually think that I do love results, and the highest level of wanting results, you actually forget about results. So I kind of look at it like I actually want results more than anyone that is still focusing on results. I want them so much I'm down to forget about them and just completely throw myself into the moment. And if you actually study Michael Jordan and you get a chance to study George Mumford, who trained Michael Jordan and Kobe, they understand that winning is about letting go of winning and getting into the moment. And I think on a superficial level, when you look at players like that, you think they're obsessed with winning. And so their focus is about winning. But the advantage they had was they understood to let go of the focus on an outcome and get into trusting your training and do that right now. So I kind of look at it like who doesn't love results? But it sucks if you always think you're losing if you don't get some great result. And I think that's the difference, is we can't have this, there's only one person who's successful and 99% have failed. That's not really how this works. And if you look at like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, they always said they were competing against themselves. And what that meant was they were trying to see what they were capable of doing. And failure was going to be totally part of that whole process. And if you were only focused on results and outcomes, you wouldn't even allow yourself to fail that much. So it's really your mastery. This is really a mastery mindset that you're working on. It's not a good or bad. It's I'm going to keep mastering something. And along that process, all kinds of results won't go my way, but then there'll be a point when a lot of results do go my way. But you have to kind of ground yourself, and I got to be here in this present moment, trusting my stuff, knowing that if I do this for a long time, I got a good chance to actually have great results. This is what I found the challenge is, as you're doing it, all anyone talks to you about is results. I mean, after a basketball game, if you look at that sport, if a fan will come up to you and ask you two things. Did you win, and how many points did you score? Like, it's like our culture is obsessed with these things, but the fan won't say, hey, were you aggressive every play, even though results weren't going your way? Like, because that's really how you score a bunch of points. You know, so it's just, it is about results, but it's about freeing yourself from being obsessed with them and allowing yourself to actually get a chance to produce.
And so there you gave
one
good example kind of how culture says this question or this statement: did you win? How many points did you score? You come after it from a more process-related focus or more process-related language. Can you just give some more examples of some practical things that if you were coaching a team, you would say to your team in order to keep the process focus?
Yeah. I mean, the most essential thing that I found coaching a team is the ability to move on to the next play fast. And we just created an analytic. We call it next play speed. So it doesn't matter whatever just happened. It's how fast can you re-engage into what's happening now. And so that one thing, if you just center on doing that one process-oriented thing, it means, hey, I'm going to miss a shot, but I'm going to get back on defense immediately. Right. And that ability to do that allows you to get back into the moment over and over again. And so I found if you're going to do one thing, it's work on your next play speed, which is how fast can we move forward to the next play? And you have to let go of results to be good at that, because you're not living and dying on the result of whatever just happened. It almost becomes irrelevant, the result that just happened. It's how fast can I move forward and re-engage? And so you're shifting what success is, because if success is, I either made a bucket or, did some sort of tangible result. If you didn't make a bucket, here's that moment where you stop because you feel like you failed. And if you're still focused on results, you'll stop. But if your focus is, hey, I got to keep rolling no matter what, you'll start to get your body to move into flow and start to move with what's actually happening right now. So next play speed is the single and most important ingredient in my mind. Once you learn to play present, it sounds easy. We know it's hard.
Sure.
It's how fast can you get back to the present? And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get so good at your next play speed that there is no next play. It's just this play right now. Eventually, it's just this play right now. I don't even think next play because I'm here. And so the initial language you'll hear a team saying is, hey, next play, move forward. You'll kind of hear a whole bench talking like that. You'll hear a whole group talking like that. And that means they're all conscious and aware that, hey, we got to move forward. And then you're kind of training. Then you have a whole group moving with the game. And when you get 15 people saying that, then it helps really push people forward.
Yeah, no.
So that's a super process-oriented thing, man.
That's
asking to move on
fantastic to think about. And then where do you start with teaching that? Let's say you have a player. Because I know I bump into kids. I do a lot of one-on-one small group training, and so I run into a lot of kids. They all want to they want to be good players. That's why they're there. But some of them do have a rough time embracing failure or learning from mistakes. So let's say that you have a kid who has a very hard time transitioning to that next play speed. Where do you start with them?
Well, I think you're hitting it on the head. It's how you coach. Players are going to do with what the coaches want them to do, and it comes with the coach's intentions. I've worked with a lot of coaches that talk about this philosophy, and then the kid misses a shot, and you see them go, God! And I'm like, you're basically telling them you're not process focused at all, like at all. So if any of this is to work, in my opinion, you can't talk about it. You really have to be about it. So if you're going to teach focused on the process as the coach, you have to model confidence when all kinds of results are going wrong. So that player goes, okay, I'm actually safe to make mistakes here. Because you can't talk about, hey, it's okay to make a mistake or fail unless you actually allow someone the space to do that. So I see it as a coach, you have to model that. You have to And you have to break through some old barriers there, because most people are thinking, why am I allowed to make a mistake, right? Right off the bat, you're thinking, what are you talking about? I'm allowed to fail. And what I'm saying is that's where we do our best learning. When you make a mistake, that's where you discover how to do things. That's how you really figure it out. And if all of your energy is trying not to make a mistake, you've already sabotaged all your growth. So I see it coming from the coach. The coach has to model that you're actually safe to make mistakes, that we're going to learn from that. And that the coach's body language and energy is conducive to allowing that happen, that growth process. And then I think once you're there, John, I think you can actually do something, right? You can actually go, okay, this culture is set to let this player discover how good they can be. And then you really work on setting your goals around, like I said, next play speed. Like if your team goal is, hey, let's just get our next play speed under a second as a team, and let's give ourselves permission to go all in with our skills. If we fail, we fail, but let's move on fast. Then right away, you create an environment right there where you're going to get everyone's behavior to be going in the same direction. And my experience was when I was started coaching the JV basketball team in 2004, when I told the kids, I could care less if you make or miss shots. Like, I don't care. They would look at you like you were crazy. Like, what do you mean? Right. The goal is to make shots. And I said, notice how much more relaxed you feel when you don't worry about a result, though. Then, so you just start with that culture. You start with actually being able to do that. That was my experience. You couldn't talk about it. You had to do it. That's my experience raising kids now. You can't say, hey, don't do as I say, or don't do as I do as I say. I've never seen that to work, like ever one time in my life. So you have to be kind of living this to be able to pass it on to someone else. That's been my experience.
So how do you then how did you come about starting to model those concepts? You said you've been doing this now for 12 years. I'm assuming, that there's been a fair amount of growth in your life as you pursued excellence in what you do. So can you think back to maybe how you were at the very beginning when you were coaching that first JV team to how you act and operate now, and just kind of highlight what the biggest areas of growth have been?
Yeah, great question. I think I've just been able to get a lot more simpler with how I explain it. I know when I first got into, coaching the JV team in 2004, that's when I started working on my master's in sports psych. I had already done a ton of mental training in 1997, just working on myself personally. So I feel like, John, I had discovered a lot of tools to help build confidence, like meditation and visualization and positive affirmations and learning how to be vulnerable. These were huge concepts that kind of saved my life. And so when I got in there to 2004, I think the big growth thing for me was I was kind of intimidated of what I knew. I felt like a lot of the stuff I knew was real touchy-feely or self-help. And at the time, I was like, there wasn't really a lot of people to talk to. And I felt like if I could teach this stuff through basketball, that was the space I could basketball was cool. So I can teach working through depression and all those stuff through a game. So I would say the thing that's changed the most over the last 12 years is now I have no problem sharing all that stuff and immediately working with someone on knowing how deep this is, and it goes way beyond basketball. And this is really about seeing yourself as a human being who's choosing to play a game called basketball and recognizing who you are as a human being and what you do as a human. But basketball is not who you are at all. And I think 12 years ago, I didn't know that at all. I knew these I kind of knew some stuff, but now I know the real work is, hey, we lead them in through basketball. But if you don't work on yourself as a human being, none of this stuff matters at all in basketball. So I have a lot more confidence with that now. I used to feel kind of uneasy, like, do I share my story? Do I share working through depression and all the stuff I've done? And now I know that there's thousands of players who want me to share that story because they want to work on that stuff as well. So now I just have a lot more confidence being more vulnerable and sharing kind of more of my story, John. I came in knowing I knew a lot, but I didn't know if it was safe to share it. And now in 2016, I feel like mental training is basically snowballing, and you're starting to see it everywhere now, becoming more and more normalized. So I feel like it's almost like I can come out of hiding is what it felt like. Where maybe 12 years ago, I felt nervous about this. If you think about strength and conditioning, when people first started lifting weights, they were all scared it was going to mess their shot up. So it's like everyone was real nervous. Now everyone lifts weights knowing, don't lift it 20 minutes before you play a game. Like, not going to. So I think mental training is kind of there now. This doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. There's nothing weird about it. It's actually really positive. It's going to help your life. So before, though, that wasn't there. It was like if you said the word psychology, people were like, no, nothing's wrong with me. I don't want to talk. And so you kind of I felt like I was hiding a lot, and I felt like this stuff I knew I had to be kind of ashamed of. And so that's why I kind of went to the youth because they didn't already have those stigmas, and I could train kids. It was the people older than me that had the stigmas. They were like, "Well, something's wrong with you if you do that," and we were like, "Nothing's wrong with you if you do this. This is how you're gonna enjoy your life." So I think that's the big change for me, is really being more confident with addressing the entire person, not just basketball or sports.
And so when you were talking about some of the different techniques and tactics, ways of building confidence, you mentioned, I'm going to forget a few, but you mentioned meditation, you mentioned positive affirmations. Which of those things play a role in your training, and how do they manifest themselves as part of it?
Yeah, I think these are great tools to help you. And if you think about the word like meditation or visualization or positive affirmations, we call it MVP, right? It's a technique. MVP for us is not most valuable player. It's meditate, visualize, positive affirmation. So it's a training technique to work on anything you're doing mentally. And we start off with on the basketball court. Okay, I'm working on making shots, my free throw routine, moving on to the next play. So we'll meditate on that. We'll visualize on that. We'll do affirmations that say, hey, I move on to the next play with ease, and so you start using those tools with what we call kind of like level 1. You're just getting into mental training. I'm working on my game. And then as you do that for a while, you realize we can take these tools a lot deeper. We can meditate on your life. We can visualize, letting go of pain that you've been holding on to since you were a kid. We can work on releasing old stories that you've been telling yourself since you were young, kind of like this broken record in your mind that's replaying the same self-talk, and the same emotions come up and the same fears come up. And ultimately, we want to take those tools and start working on yourself as a human, and doing that. And then we can take it even deeper and work on you spiritually and, human experience, choosing to play a game. And we can address the game, but that's going to miss 2 huge pillars: your human experience and then your spiritual experience or energy experience. So meditation, visualization, and positive affirmations are, they're tools, and you can take them as deep as you want. And you can put, like, say you looked at meditation like a squat in the weight room. You can put as much weight on meditation as you want. Right. And you can go down and work as deep as you want and work on emotions that you were trying to push away and hide from for 15 or 20 years. And bringing them out means you got to feel all kinds of feelings that you didn't know you were going to have to feel. And so I look at myself as being able to, my initial work was healing myself. It had nothing to do with sports. It was me recovering, becoming whole, learning how to fully be present within my own life. It was me taking that to basketball because I thought that was the entry point to where the world would accept some of this stuff. So, John, those tools are really, you can use them at any of the levels that I help train people with. It all depends on where you are, and my philosophy is meet people where they are. I'm not going to talk about spiritual stuff with someone who's like, I just want to get my free throws down. We're going to work on free throws. But if you've been training someone for 7 or 8 years, it goes spiritual, like, period. It's way beyond shooting free throws. It's not going to go there in a few hours, but eventually, if you've been working with someone for years, in my experience, that's where it goes. And that's where you can really help someone live that full life, because after learning to play present, you need to live present, and really learn how to do that. This isn't about doing it for 2 hours on a court. It's about living this for 24 hours, and really, really experiencing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I like how you were talking about there, meeting people where they're at. I know I read in the book the other day, it was a quote that said, the difference between a pest and a guest is an invitation. So I think that's always wise for coaches, mentors to always be accessible and be willing to meet people where they are, so that at the end of the day, you love helping people. I love helping people. And you can do that if you do meet them where those people are at. I think that's fantastic.
It's maybe the most crucial thing there is. This information is out there. This knowledge, frankly, is not new. This wisdom has been out there for thousands of years. If you go study samurais, they were doing this stuff. It's all over the place. It's where I feel like my benefit to this was I can relate to people and connect to them. And so I was a basketball coach where I was getting this through to people. I have people call me coach. It's a medium that everyone likes to be coached. It's like, yeah, there's no problem getting coached. Even the word counselor still may rub someone the wrong way. So a lot of this is learning how to get it to people. And, we call it meet them. If they're in the sandbox playing, meet them in the sandbox and play with them. Don't miss them. Don't start talking super deep stuff and they're not even there yet. So it's when you asked that question a while ago, how have I gotten better in 12 years? I think that's another one to add to it, is I get better at meeting people where they are and not feeling pressure to prove to you everything I know. And sometimes you have this initially, like, I'm going to tell you everything I know. And this person's like, oh my, I'm so overwhelmed. Like, I just need to know one thing, not 50 things, you know?
How did you get to that place to where you started to feel more secure, more confident? Was it just a time thing, or?
Yeah, I think first of all, we have to define confidence. And I think that the way I define confidence is it's an action, you know, and I think I came up thinking confidence was a feeling, you know, that confidence was this feeling where everything feels right, everything feels smooth, and I can just go right into it. And I realized, man, that doesn't happen all that often in life. So I kind of figured out that that feeling comes after you allow yourself to be vulnerable, that the more I would allow myself to be vulnerable and I would go through a vulnerable experience, after that I would get this euphoric confidence, fear that anymore. So I actually look at confidence more of courage, and I kind of look at it like confidence is just doing the right action in a moment where you don't feel like doing that action, you know? So I look at the difference between a confident person and a scared person is simply their action they take. It's not their feelings. They both feel the exact same. It's the confident person tells himself, I'm not really in danger. There's really intense feelings here. I'm going to move right into this fear and act right into it. And then after they do that and go through and realize they didn't die, they're okay, you get the actual confidence after. And the confidence, like, of course I can do this. But at first, it's really about being courageous and about feeling comfortable being uncomfortable. So going back to that question you asked, like, how did I get more confident at this? Once I realized being vulnerable is the key, I consciously sought out ways to get vulnerable and get uncomfortable. And for what I was going to do, which was speaking, presenting, communicating, the most vulnerable thing I could think of was stand-up comedy and improv, was consciously trying to put myself in front of a room where I had to make people laugh or do something. So this was like 10 years ago, as I understood vulnerability is what sets you free. I just did whatever I could to get vulnerable, man, like whatever I could. And so long story short, you know, 8-week stand-up comedy class, I have the microphone in my hand. It's my moment on stage, and, you know, I say my jokes and nobody's laughing, and it's beyond quiet, and I can feel sweat coming down, you know, and in my mind, I was like, here it is, man, this is rock bottom. Like, this is that moment that everyone fears. And as I was there, I got a sense of confidence that was so overwhelming that why would I ever fear this? You know, why would I ever fear avoiding this? And so from that vulnerable space, I've just taken that and consciously tried to allow myself to get more and more vulnerable. And so that's how I've got myself, you know, to kind of where I am now. And I don't mean vulnerable like be risky and put yourself in physical danger. I mean vulnerable where you're like, there's actually no physical danger. What am I really afraid of? It's just feeling uncomfortable. That's all it is. Speaking in front of a group, doing a presentation, taking a shot when you've airballed 3 in a row, you know, like, you're not in physical danger, but you're going to feel a lot of feelings. And so if you can allow yourself to feel the feelings that maybe you don't want to feel, what you'll realize is you're okay. And so through going through that experience, John, I kind of freed myself from any energy that is resisting fear. I made a choice in my life. I can't live in fear. I can't do it. And so to do that, though, I had to look at every part of fear in my life that I was avoiding and try to be loving towards it and be compassionate towards it. So this is what I'm getting at, that really confidence to me is about being courageous. It's about learning to be compassionate and learning to love yourself, even though the results aren't going your way or you feel uncomfortable. And courage and compassion will allow me to go for it, you know, and to really allow myself to develop that good feeling, which came after allowing myself to be vulnerable, you know? So if you think about it in terms of lifting weights, right? If I'm lifting weights and I want to get stronger and I go into the weight room, most people understand that if they allow themselves to feel a burn in their muscles or they get a little bit uncomfortable lifting, that allows them to get stronger. Right. And so if you apply that same formula mentally, you'll go, oh, I need to get a little vulnerable mentally. I need to get myself a little uncomfortable because that's how I'll get stronger. And when you lift weights and you allow yourself to get vulnerable and you let your muscles burn, you know, the next day you're sore, you feel uncomfortable, but you tell yourself that's positive. When you're growing yourself mentally and you allow yourself to be vulnerable, sometimes the next day or two, you feel really low. Like, it's amazing. You'll feel like really low. And what I try to work with people is that's okay. You're freeing yourself from those old negative emotions of fear that you've been harboring inside. And when it comes out, that's what you feel as it comes out. But then a couple of days pass and you're like, I feel lighter. I feel freer. And now confidence has a space to emerge in your body because you've let fear kind of go. And the way you let it go, John, is you feel it. You have to feel it. You can't lift weights and not feel the weights. You have to feel it, you know? So it's a consciously trying to stop running from what makes you vulnerable to build confidence. You go towards it little bit at a time, allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable. Then after a while, you realize you have the strength to be with those things you are avoiding, and you just get confidence that's unshakable because but it has to come from within. And I haven't seen anyone do it if they've avoided being vulnerable or avoided being uncomfortable. I still haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen someone go into a weight room get stronger by avoiding being uncomfortable, right? If you told your strength coach, hey, I can't get uncomfortable today and I don't want to feel a little vulnerable, the strength coach would say, well, come back when you really want to get a little better. I'm not saying be miserable in here, but you're going to have to be a little bit uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Right?
So how did you get to that place, Graham, where you understood that was the right thing to do? Because hearing the things you're saying, that it seems to me to be a common trait of successful people, that they have faced fear, they have had a sort of rock bottom experience. I can think of like J.K. Rowling said that when she realized her greatest fear and had hit rock bottom, it became the foundation with which she built her life up from that. And that's very common among successful people. What drove you to go do the stand-up comedy? Where did you get that idea initially? Did you have a mentor or read a book, or was it just by experience?
I think at that point, this was when I first started graduate school. I had already done so much interpersonal work on myself from 1997 to basically 1999. I took two and a half years of my life and just went totally in on working on myself and really allowing myself to feel feelings I didn't want to feel, to look at stuff, behavior I'd done when I was a child, like really examine my life and work through a bunch of stuff. And that allowed me to, and once I got through that, I was like, wow, and this might sound funny, I thought I didn't die. Like, wow, that didn't kill me. Like, when I stopped running from the fears I was running from, I truly thought I was going to die. The moment that I started working on myself, it was kind of okay, that's it for me. Like, and this is when payphones were around. I was at a payphone. I was at a junior college. I was calling my mom to tell her, like, I don't have any more. Like, life has to be better than this. I'm so depressed and so lost. And I called my mom, and I remember her vividly saying, you can rewire your brain. And I was like, what does that mean? And all it meant to me was I heard the word hope inside. I thought, okay, there's hope. Because I had no hope. I was done. And it was out of that desperation that I called my mom to basically say, I don't have any more in life. This is it. And she said, there's something you can do. So I said, okay, since I have no other option, let's go try this one last thing. And it happened to be this place called the San Francisco Healing Center in San Francisco, where I met my trainer, teacher, mentor, Jocelyn. And that's when I started working on myself. And, sure enough, as soon as you want to heal, as soon as you want to work on yourself, it works. You can heal, right? And if you start doing the work, it works. And so I was like, wow, it was so vulnerable to do that, but I got so much from it. By the time I was in graduate school in 2004, I already knew that vulnerability was how you become victorious. I didn't read about it. I knew it. Like, I knew it on a cellular level. I'd already experienced it for years. So really, when I figured out that, going to stand-up comedy was the obvious thing to do, I was like, of course, let's get more vulnerable. I'm not in danger. I already knew all that. So I felt I needed to do anything I could to get vulnerable, because if I was going to help athletes deal with pressure, I really better be able to deal with pressure really well myself. So I sought out pressure situations to basically free myself, to feel free. So now when I speak in front of a group, I don't really fear anything. I look forward to it, because hopefully I get vulnerable, and that allows, to me, the most creative stuff to come out of me. I look for those situations now, because that's where the zone is. That's where the right challenge is. That's where really special things happen, when you put yourself in a place where you feel a little vulnerable, but you actually have the skills to deal with it. And you're basically throwing your ego aside, and you're saying, I'm getting out of the way. I want to see what's going to happen. And I want to go all in and see, and kind of see like everyone else what happens.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to keep piggybacking on this again. I know I sent you a ton of questions, but this always happens. I just get so intrigued by one thing and keep digging. But I love your story so far, Graham, and I'm very thankful for all that you have shared.
Yeah.
It kind of, in the world that we live in, one with, Twitter, self-promotion, especially amongst young athletes, how do you get a player that is very ego-driven, very performance-driven, very much I have to practice so I look good, not get better? How do you help them get to a place where they understand that they need to embrace discomfort and they're willing to embrace it? How do you break that ego? Is it something that they have to have a bad experience, they have to hit rock bottom, or can you take them there as a coach?
It's a really good question. So I've noticed this. There's the ones that want greatness and they'll do anything to do it. Maybe that's 1 in 10 million who are like, I'll do anything to be great. And then you have the people who are at rock bottom who are like, it's either something else or death. Mm-hmm. So you have these two polar opposites that gravitate towards it. And then you have this middle ground that's, in my mind, just kind of stuck in this unfortunate place of they're just kind of stuck and they haven't been forced into crushing their ego to really see what they're capable of doing. And so that's always been kind of the challenge, is how do we work with this group that is kind of comfortable and mm-hmm. there's no real element forcing them into doing it. So my experience has been, if you're working with a competitive person, I just immediately tap into them being competitive. Mm-hmm. I'm like, are you competitive? Or do you seek out challenges? And most of them will say yes. And so then what we go into is the biggest challenges are usually the most uncomfortable. So if I can get them to identify that going after being uncomfortable is actually what the most competitive people do, mm-hmm. then we've opened the door for them to look at themselves and look at the situations that are uncomfortable for them that'll allow us to go into that. And it can be tough because I can want to help someone, but if they don't want to help themselves, it does not matter. They have to want them help themselves. So what I've done the last 12 years is try to normalize this training so there's more entryways into people doing this. And that's why my model was work with guys who are teenagers and get them to the NBA. And the whole time we're working, it's not something we have to hide. You know, I trained Ben Simmons from LSU. I trained Skal Labissiere from Kentucky. I trained Jaylen Brown from Cal. I've trained Aaron Gordon from Orlando since he was 11 years old. This is our deal. These are young guys. They don't think anything is weird with this. And so as all these guys, Andrew Wiggins, Zach LaVine, all these guys are becoming pros, it's becoming more and more normal to do this. So my hope was that the more players we can have out there who, just like they talk about their skills coach or their strength coach, now they're talking about their mental skills coach. Mm-hmm. We've basically opened up the middle ground to train mentally, John, because the great ones are going to do it automatically. They just won't tell you because it's their advantage. And the people who feel like they're about to die and they give one more shot and they actually go, I want to heal and I want to get it right, they'll do it. It's that middle ground. It's kind of playing it safe, avoiding fear and staying in that ego space, like you said, trying to look good. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones who are being devastated. So if they see Zach LaVine do it, if they see Ben Simmons do it, they see Aaron Gordon do it, maybe that gives them a chance that we all start doing this. You know?
Yeah.
The challenge was, John, when I was doing my training, I knew this stuff helped, but it wasn't normal at all. It wasn't cool. People thought it was weird. NBA teams, not all of them have mental skills coaches. That's starting to change now. You see it become normalized. So I was like, I'm going to go with the cool players, and I'm going to go with, like, dunk contest winners are cool. They were cool when I was a kid. Right. You know, that was cool to me. So that's what we did, did that. And so that's how I'm trying to hit the middle ground and trying to hit the masses now. Like, we're really trying to make this tangible. So, your average 14-year-old is I train mentally. Of course I do. Why would I not?
Sure. And so where would you have someone that's brand new to not to train, that now they're at that place where they say, yes, I need to get involved with this? What would be one of the first 1, 2, or 3 things that you would tell them, this is where you need to get started, this is a great thing for you to do, if you don't mind sharing any of that?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't mind at all. I mean, obviously I'm totally biased. I formed a company called Play Present, which was designed to simplify mental training for athletes. I do think we're pretty good at what we do. We're going to get a lot better, but a start is going to Play Present and kind of seeing what we do and how we train. I think the first thing is understanding, too, this is not a quick fix. Like, if you're ready to train mentally, it's like when you're ready to train physically or you're ready to work with a skills coach and work on your game. This is something you do every day. This is not something you do for an hour and then you mastered it. I'm about to be 38 this year, and I feel like I'm just now working on this stuff. When I feel like, I started when I was 19. So I see it like anything else in life. You have to start with the right philosophy. And our philosophy is this: awareness activates your abilities. You have all this stuff inside of you already. All this stuff is there. It's just dormant. And we want to make you aware of it. So the first part of mental training is really gaining knowledge and gaining awareness and gaining wisdom. So you kind of know how this stuff works. And the second part of it is what we call having experience. Experience enhances your enlightenment. So once you become aware, which is step 1, now I have to actually go out and take this awareness and put it to use. I have to actually take the words I'm learning and these philosophies and go out there and experience it. I have to airball a shot and move on to that next play fast, when previously I would have thrown a fit and beat myself up negatively. And you have to have this experience, because it's real learning is all experiential. It doesn't matter. We're just saying words until you actually experience it. So what we try to do is make you aware you have it in you, help you go have the experience. And the third part is repetition retains your realizations. So none of this works without reps. Once you have one experience, now let's go do that all the time. You know, this is, we wanted to take mental training. And if you think of the word training, that's the word we're emphasizing. This is real skill training. This isn't a quick fix. We're not here to fix a problem or get you through a crisis. This is actually trying you to do something. So if you put a little bit of time in every day and you build on it like any other skill, you're going to get better at it. You know, so we think build that awareness first, have some experiences, and then have a lot of reps with that. And you're going to start to get better at this, because like any other skill, at first you have to think while you're doing this. And then after a while, you won't have to think. This will become more natural for you. You know, I use the story of Aaron Gordon. When I started working with Aaron Gordon, when he was 11 years old, I had him do a drill. And the drill was this. It was at a camp. And I said, I need a volunteer. And his hand shot up. I didn't know who Aaron Gordon was. And I had him come out. And the drill was, I had a bucket. And he had to stand 10 feet back with golf balls, and he had to throw the golf balls in the bucket. And it was on a hard ground. The golf ball was going to bounce and go out of the bucket every time. It's impossible to get the ball in the bucket. So all we wanted to see was, how do you fail? And he didn't know that. So he throws the first golf ball, and it goes right in and comes out, you know, and he's losing his mind and he's going crazy. And I was like, did you know that was a trick? The whole thing is how do you respond after you make a mistake? Fast forward 4 or 5 years later, he's 15 years old, and we've been working for a while. People think he has a magic ability to move on to the next play, right? They're like, wow, this guy, and they call it a motor. This guy just has a motor. You know, he can airball a shot and keep moving. And I'm thinking, no, he spent about 4 or 5 years training himself on next play speed. That's it. And he's diligently worked through so many uncomfortable moments to keep pushing forward, keep pushing forward. And now someone who doesn't know he's training thinks he was born with a motor.
Right.
So, and I know, wow, he's busted his to get better at this. Like any other kind of training, he's failed and failed and failed and failed and failed, and you get a little better, and failed and failed and failed. And so if you approach it with that philosophy, you get better at this. And you know, I share a lot of stories with Aaron. Aaron shot 35% or 20% in high school free throws. In the NBA, he's shooting over 70%. And so the point is, you can learn how to do this stuff. His mindset was equipped to learn how to shoot free throws because he wasn't trying to avoid failure. He knew the more he misses, the more he's going to learn how to figure it out. And so he goes 0 for 9 in high school games. And now in the NBA, he's, you know, shooting right around 70%, which is not bad. And he's only 20 years old. So he has the mastery mindset there where he's training all the time. And so so I don't know if that helps at all, but it's really embracing this. Like I tell people, if you want to train mentally, give me 2 to 3 years as a base. Like really look at it like if I can put in 2 or 3 strong years to start, we've got something. I'm not saying working with someone with mental skills can't help you get through a crisis. If you talk to someone for an hour, it definitely helps. I'm talking about training, building a real skill set that's there in really high pressure situations without you having to think about it. It's just what you do. If you want that, you got to train, and you got to put in so many repetitions with this that there is no thinking about next play speed. Of course, I'm here in this moment. Aaron and I never talk about next play speed because eventually you don't ever want to say those words, because that just makes you think about something else besides what I'm doing right now. He's the point where he's trained so much he doesn't say those things. Like a really good shooter doesn't really say, keep your elbow in, snap your wrist every time they shoot. After you've done that 8 or 9 years, you're like, man, that's what happens when I shoot. You don't need to, if I think about form, it'll actually kind of screw my shot up because it's already hardwired to do it naturally. So it's real training. The more you put in reps with your mindset and your focus, the more natural it becomes and the easier it becomes, and the less you actually have to spend energy thinking about it. At first, you spend a ton of energy thinking because it's new. And then after a while, after you train it, it's like other training, like you don't think about it as much. It just happens more naturally.
Right. So I'm going to kind of play a little devil's advocate here a little bit because I love what you're saying. And I just want to ask a question I feel like maybe others would have. Talking about that next play speed in conjunction with mistakes or how you learn, is there any room for reflection?
Yeah.
And so can you just talk about
Really good. you think about like definitely like you're only going to play a game for 2 hours. You have 22 hours to reflect. Don't do it in that moment during the game. That's not when you reflect while the game is going on. So it's just that moment, John. You don't do it. I'm not saying during a dead ball, during a timeout. It's just you now become conscious of when to do it. Of course you reflect, and of course you plan. You don't just be, this isn't YOLO, right? This isn't like you only live once and who gives, I'm just going crazy right now in the moment. We plan and we reflect, but when it's time to go, we go. And you can look at the analogy we always use. It's like samurai warriors. Samurai warriors, unlike playing basketball, their lives were on the line. It wasn't just your ego on the line. If a samurai misses a swing with their sword, they're like, I can't believe my sword didn't hit right there. They're dead right in that moment. So what we want you to do is you got to be like a samurai when you play. It does not matter if you just like injustice just happened to you by the referee. None of that matters. Live right now and move on to that next play. And then after the game, let's look at film. Let's debrief. Let's figure out what happened. Let's plan again. But in that moment, that's not when you do that. Right. Or if you do that and you're playing against me, I'm whipping you right there because I'm taking that half a second. You're not there and I'm getting a bucket. Yeah. And when competition is even and bodies are even, I need a half a step. That's it. Right. I need a fraction of a second to get open. That's all I need. And if you're not trained mentally and that's what you do, and I'm trained mentally, then good number, I'm going to win, right? If we're equal and you're not trained to move forward and you're still preparing or planning in a moment when you should be performing and just letting it happen, the person who's in the moment has a huge advantage.
Absolutely.
Huge. So it's a great question because we always stress play present, but you have to plan and prepare. You just got to know when to do it.
Right. I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely.
If you're on the free throw line thinking of the possible results of you missing a free throw, wrong time to plan. You know, because fear lives in the future. And you're going to think, if I miss this shot, oh my God, I lose my scholarship. If I lose that, then I'm homeless. Then all of a sudden you're homeless. Really, you're just on the free throw line, and you should just be feeling your shot and letting it happen.
Right. So you started to kind of attack a question I do want to ask you, and this may take us a long time, may not take long at all, but where does pressure come from?
Yeah, cool. Well, first of all, John, I think what you call pressure, I call joy. I'll just start with that. So pressure is what you call it. Like if I asked you what pressure was, my guess is you would describe feelings. You would describe your heart rate. You would describe maybe a tense feeling in your body. You would tell me your mind is going fast. You would tell me there was feelings in your stomach, perhaps like butterflies. Am I on the right track? Is that how you would describe pressure? Yeah, I just call that joy. So right away, those feelings to me mean a really positive thing. They mean a really positive thing. So pressure, I look at pressure as two things. We can get to the root of pressure and figure out where do all these feelings come from and address that. That takes a little more work and a little more awareness. Or we can deal with what's happening to my body right now. Like I'm breathing really fast, my mind is racing. How do I get myself composed in this moment? And how do I get to the root of where this stuff is coming from? So John, that's how I address pressure. Usually you just help someone get through a moment. Okay, right now, just breathe and be where you are and accept how you feel, right? And don't let the stories go crazy because you'll have a feeling in your body. And what happens is instead of just letting it be a feeling, people's minds go wild and think the feeling means all these things. Like right off the bat, what I explained was what you call pressure, I call joy. Joy to me is when I feel butterflies in my stomach. Joy to me is when my mind is racing. Joy to me is when I feel like I'm going to use the bathroom in my pants. Because, John, at this point, I'm firmly grounded that being vulnerable is where confidence comes from. So pressure to me, like I look to be vulnerable. So the root of pressure, I actually enjoy because I've gotten to the root of it and know I'm not trying to get away from these feelings. These feelings actually mean I'm about to get vulnerable, and being vulnerable is where my greatness comes out of. So, and the other side of it is I know how to deal with those feelings. My self-talk is, hey, this is joy. I feel like I'm going to use the bathroom in my pants. This is joy. And I firmly believe that at this point because I have so many reps telling myself that. I have so many experiences where it actually is joy that it is joy for me. So the first part of pressure is I'm not going to run from this. I'm going to go towards it, and I'm going to choose to label the feelings as something that's positive to me. That's the very first thing I do. Don't run from it, go towards it, because the feelings aren't going anywhere. I think some people think that they're trying to get rid of all these feelings, and then they get really stressed out. That's like being in traffic and trying to make the traffic go away. Notice how stressed out you become. So the first part is these feelings are going to be here every single time I perform, and that's okay. I'm going to call them something positive, and I'm going to learn to deal with it, because really what you're talking about is just energy. We're learning to manage energy, right? And we're learning to manage the stories behind the energy. If your story is, I love this energy, and I'm going to go out there and allow myself to be present, and I have no fear of failure because I'm being coached in an environment where we know that I'm allowed to go express myself and trust my skills, then those feelings become something you go towards, and they help you go to this place where you need to be to see how great you can be. So those feelings don't go away, man, is what I'm saying. You learn to look at them a different way, and you look at them like they're empowering, and then it's energy in you. And the very root of it, I've found, again, if you call it joy, if you look at it that's something positive, it totally changes how it affects you and what it does to you. You know, so I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of my philosophy.
I kind of want to make sure that I'm understanding. So I'm going to kind of pair it back to you, what I heard a little bit. In a summary, it sounds to me like you're saying that what matters most is what you believe, because that's going to dictate your actions, and that's going to dictate how you respond to it. You have the belief that pressure is an opportunity to learn, grow, and become better, and therefore it's not to be hidden from, it's to be embraced and attacked.
You're hitting it on the head. And right, the opposite of that would be pressure is a place to expose either I'm good or bad at something. People don't want to be seen as bad at something. So that mindset, you'll feel those feelings and be like, get me away from this. But if you're like, this is an opportunity for me to grow, to master something. I'm in an environment where it's encouraged to go into this uncomfortable space and to see what happens. Then all of a sudden it's like, this is something we go towards, you know. And I'm not saying there's 1 in 10 million kid who can thrive in an environment where a coach says, you know, everything's on the line. This is why you get paid the big bucks. There's people that can thrive, but that's like a miracle that there's someone who does that. The average person is not thriving in that situation. And we're trying to work on creating an environment where everyone can thrive under these situations. We're building more resiliency, building more grit, right? I mean, that's what we want. Not when someone stops when one thing goes wrong and they just stop.
Absolutely.
Shut down, you know?
So, yeah, for sure. And as we kind of wrap up then, Graham, would you be willing to share, take one of those, either visualization, whether it's, meditation, whether it's positive affirmations, and just kind of flesh out one of those in a little more detail and provide a few like practical steps as to what that would actually look like to practice on a regular basis? Sure.
So when I start out with an MVP, it's always really simple. So the meditation is simply to focus on your breath. And so you have people just start to breathe in, and we're thinking like 1 or 2 minutes. And all you try to do is feel your breath go all the way down to your belly and feel your breath come out of your mouth. So all you're doing is you're giving your mind one thing to focus on, because your mind can only focus on one thing at a time. A funny thing, there is no such thing as multitasking. You can only do one thing at a time. So what you're doing is you're training your mind to kind of go, let me get into this one thing, which is my breath. And your breath is happening right now, John. So this is the present moment. And so you're training yourself to kind of engage into the present. And what usually happens as we start, and even after we've been doing this for 20 years, is your mind wanders. It focuses on the breath and then goes to what you had for lunch or whatever. And so the skill becomes gently bring your focus back to your breath. Once you're aware that, wow, I'm now thinking about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, come back to my breath. And that's the initial work. It's just coming back to your breath. So that's where I like everyone to start. And you can kind of look at that like next play speed. Once you've lost your focus, which is getting away from your breath, is how fast can I come back to it? You know, you don't beat yourself up for losing your focus. It's okay. Be happy that you were aware that you've lost your focus, and you just keep coming back to your breath. And what that's training you to do for a minute or two is just get yourself into the present moment, right? We have a million things going on in our lives. And if we can just slow things down for a second, focus on one thing, our breath, we're starting to tame our mind a little bit. And you'd be foolish to think we're trying to eliminate thoughts and feelings. That's not it. All kinds of thoughts come up. You get good at this when you just start to observe your thoughts and feelings and you don't follow everyone, if that makes sense. Because we're going to have 30, 40,000 thoughts a day that come up in your mind. You don't have to follow everyone. So the trained mind doesn't follow every thought, because a lot of negative thoughts come up sometimes. And a trained mind goes, I don't need to follow that. Let me get back to my breath. Let me get back to being here. An untrained mind follows every thought like they're real and follows every feeling like they're real. Thoughts and feelings pass. They pass like clouds all the time. And so the meditation, what we want you to do is learn to focus on your breath You're not working on clearing your mind or eliminating thoughts and feelings. You're working on starting to observe. And as you observe, you're detaching yourself from being reactionary, impulsive, and kind of in survival mode. And you're choosing your response now. That's a big, big first step. So that's kind of the first part of meditation. It goes as deep as you want to go after that. But that's just the start, John. Like, just focus on your breath. You might have 1,000 thoughts that come up. Just come back to your breath and let those thoughts be there. You know, some thoughts might be like, this is stupid. What is it? Just, okay, there they are. And then, so then you're kind of separating yourself from being like we call that dog in a park that's just chasing every squirrel. Like, don't be that dog that's trained and chase the squirrel you want to chase because you want to chase it, not because you feel hopeless and you're just reacting to everything instead of choosing your response. All right, so that's 2 minutes, meditate, right? And let's just say the skill we're working on is next play speed. So we've meditated for 2 minutes. We were observing our thoughts and feelings. We're coming to our breath. We're being here. Then what I like players to do is just visualize themselves on the court. And by visualize, you're using your imagination. And some people see really clearly in their mind. Some people don't see clearly at all. They feel it. So I just want you to go back and remember a moment where you didn't move on to the next play. And all of us have one of those moments. We all have those. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through in your mind, and you're going to visualize actually changing your behavior in that play. So instead of stopping and not moving on to the next play, you're going to go through in your mind and you're going to see yourself moving forward. So you're going to change the behavior in your mind. You're going to see it like it's real in your mind. And that's just an easy thing to visualize. And with visualization, it's kind of like you want to make it as real as possible. So use every sense. Feel it, taste it, touch it, smell it, hear it. You know, as real as it can be, like a real game where you can hear the lights buzzing, you can hear the fans, you can smell popcorn or whatever is real for you. Make it real like that, because your brain does not know the difference between imagining something and actually doing something. That's how powerful your brain is. Right. So visualization works that the more real you can make it, your body thinks it's actually happening. So you're getting real mental reps by imagining it. And so when you find yourself back on the court, you've already got some reps moving on to that next play because you've done it here. All right, so we've meditated, we've visualized for a minute or two, just go through, see yourself or feel yourself moving on to that next play, see a good result. And then the affirmation, I would have you say it to yourself 5 times at the end, I move on to the next play with ease. I move on to the next play with ease. And you say that to yourself 5 or 10 times, and then you come out of your MVP and you just trained for 5 minutes. And you trained on moving on to the next play fast, right? So you've identified, hey, I don't move on to the next play. I know this is a skill I need to get better at. Let me train it. Let me do an MVP. I'm going to meditate for a minute or two to get myself present, work on kind of calming everything and getting centered. Then I'm going to visualize being successful at the skill I'm not very good at right now. Then I'm going to affirm that I am good at that skill, even if I'm not very good at it yet. I'm going to say the affirmation as if it's already happening. I move on to the next play with ease. Right. I didn't say I am going to move on to the next play with ease. I say I move on to the next play with ease. So, and there you just trained. And so that's awareness. Now you'd want to go out to the court and have that experience. Right. All right, I just trained it. I just did it in my mind. Now I'm totally conscious of that. Now when I'm playing, I want to see myself move on to that next play where normally I would be stuck. And then after practice, you kind of check in. How'd I do? Hey, I did great at that. Okay, my goal is to get a bunch of reps at this now. I'm on the right track. So you did an MVP before you played, got yourself lined up and focused. Then you went and had the experience with what you were training with, checked in with yourself after the game and told yourself, okay, now I got to do this a bunch, right? Now you're on the track to training. And if you did that 30, 60, 90 days in a row, 100 days, you gave yourself 700 days, now you're really training. And after a while, you don't have to say the affirmation, I move on to the next play with ease. That's simply what you do, because you've trained yourself to do that. So that's moving on to the next play is what I think everyone should start with. I think that's where everyone limits themselves and everyone shuts themselves down, and just start right there with that.
Awesome. So I really appreciate you giving me all that time. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. But before we do, can you just kind of let the people know how to learn more about what you're doing, how to get in contact with you, possibly any resources you have to share?
Yeah, for sure. So we're everything Play Present. Playpresent.com is our company, at Play Present on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Everything is at Play Present. The first book I wrote is called Play Present. You can find it on our website. You can find it on Amazon. We have a podcast that we do. So really just kind of Play Present is our brand that we're trying to just get that language out to the world. So you just kind of look that up wherever you are. All my information is on the website. If you want to get your team involved in this, we have like a team package that we sell. You can get it right online. Everyone can have it right on their phone. So we really tried to make this as simple as we could for everyone to do it. So when people say, we know sports is 80% mental, now we know a place they can go train.
Right.
And we're not saying we're the only place to do this or the best place. We're just a place. There's people that have been doing this, for a long time, great people. And I feel like some of my role in this, John, was to help really normalize this and make this kind of a natural part of what we do. So I feel honored to do this. There's so many great mental skills coaches or mindfulness coaches or sports psychology, or there's a million names for these people now, brain power coaches. I see it everywhere. Go find the one that you resonate is my advice to everyone. It doesn't need to be me, but find someone you resonate with, find someone you connect with, because this stuff is too valuable and you're too important to not have someone coach you on this stuff. And I was lucky enough to have a guide when I was 19 years old, and 20 years later, she still guides me. And I would really, really want everyone else to go find their coach as well, because this stuff is so important and it'll change your life,
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Graham. I love getting to finally talk with you face to face. I'm appreciative of everything you share and everything you do. So if I can ever help you, or what I'll end up doing tomorrow, I'll type up a little summary of our talk. I'll send the video, that summary over to you so you have them to share with anybody you'd like. And hopefully, like you said, we can keep helping people through what we do. So
thank you, John, man. Honored to be here, and anything I can do for you, man, just hit me up, and you got my number anytime.
I do. Absolutely. Sounds good, Graham.
Okay, talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, man.
Cool.